Over the last 502 episodes, I've tried to be very noisy about a certain phenomenon that was very visible in crypto. This was crypto project founders executing on a game plan of building a platform and underlying protocol that does something that would be illegal in any other context under the premise that they could hand off the project to a DAO, sell their tokens, and ride off into the sunset, somehow immune to the powers of regulators. The rationale was always that the DAO was decentralized. Who would the regulators even go after? How would they even serve an unincorporated entity like a DAO? The DAO was seen simultaneously as a magical shield and invisibility cloak. DeFi projects especially leaned into this myth. They were like drunken teenagers, one by one, breaking into the zoo and then callously striding through the tiger pen with ribeyes tied to their waists. They felt perfectly safe, protected by the magical talisman of the DAO. But it turns out that currently it's actually the year of the tiger. And today, the tigers decided to start eating the intruders, talisman and all. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss how a recent decision in the Ooki DAO case may have fundamentally changed crypto's perception of the legal effects of a DAO, a new Cardano social media platform, how the run-of-the-mill thieves are still the kings of the robbery forest, a new detail about the Lace wallet, and the very first Cardano Music Awards. If you saw this image and immediately knew it was not human generated, just something I spun up whole cloth with AI, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Here it is, guys. The United States District Court for the Northern District of California has decided in the Ooki DAO case that the DAO can be sued. So you'll remember there was a small victory early on. There was a question, could they just serve the DAO via the chat box and the forums of the DAO? And the court decided, no, since you've actually got real humans, you can serve. Service of process must be accomplished that way. We need you to actually serve those humans. And in that case, the humans were the actual founders of the entity, the project. The founders of the project, they had sort of a labs type entity, which is the common game plan for all of these projects. They have the labs entity, and there's humans behind that lab entity, and they build the project, usually a platform and a protocol. And then they sort of hand the platform and the protocol over to the DAO and, sort of theoretically walk away. So that common game plan is what was followed here. And the court said, hey, look, since we do have some humans we can serve here, you have to serve those humans. But the DAO and a lot of people in crypto were hoping that the court would say, hey, actually, you can't even sue this DAO. And it all hinged on the notion of whether or not, or it hinged on the question of whether or not the unincorporated association was, or the DAO was an unincorporated association. Of course, the CFTC was saying it is one, and everybody in crypto was pretty much like, no, it's not. So here's the definition of an unincorporated association that was being contemplated by the court here and that was at issue. A group whose members share a common purpose, so it's a group and the members share a common purpose, who function under a common name, under circumstances where fairness requires the group be recognized as a legal entity. So, of course, this word fairness is a big problem because what's fair to one person may not be fair to another person. So we've got this fairness issue. Is it fair? Does fairness require that the group be recognized as a legal entity? Because I think we can all admit to ourselves that a DAO is generally going to be a group, and there's usually some purpose for the DAO. It has some kind of common purpose. Do they function under a common name? Yeah, the DAO usually has a name. And do they function under a common name where fairness requires a group be recognized as a legal entity? So just based on this definition, I kind of had a feeling it's going to be pretty easy for any judge to come to the conclusion that a DAO is an unincorporated association. And The crypto people who filed amicus briefs in this case, they made very clever arguments, kind of analogizing street gangs that previously hadn't been held to be unincorporated associations, that kind of thing. They made very, very clever, skillful arguments, but the court wasn't having it. The court said, for several reasons, I conclude that the CFTC sufficiently alleged, for the purposes of their service motion, that Ooki DAO is an unincorporated association under state law. So the California state law definition was at issue here. The CFTC shows that Ooki DAO is a group of two or more persons. As we talked about, a DAO is going to be two or more people. And the crypto people contended that the DAO cannot establish this requirement because the DAO is a technological tool, not a group of persons. This was a clever argument. The crypto amicus briefs argued that a DAO is akin to a group of people who use Microsoft Word. They are not any kind of unincorporated association. It's just a group of it's an amorphous group of people using the same technology stack. Court was not persuaded by that argument. They say the CFTC sufficiently explained that it is suing the DAO, which is comprised of individual token holders, and the crypto people filing amicus briefs do not assert that the token holders are not persons. This element is satisfied. So we don't have, for the court, the question was, is the DAO composed of persons? And we all know that the DAO is composed of token holders in most cases, and they are, in fact, persons. The court next went on to look at whether or not the persons who joined Ooki DAO did so by mutual consent. They say the crypto people contend that different persons casting different votes at different times does not constitute mutual consent. The court says that argument misunderstands the element, which asks whether the persons joined by mutual consent. Here, the lab entity founders formed the DAO and transitioned control of its governance, including its treasury funds, to the token holders. There are no allegations that suggest this formation or transfer of power was not consensual, nor are there allegations or arguments that suggest any token holder did not consent to the inherent power that came from holding a token and thus being able to play a role in governance choices. And if token holders did not consent to this power, they could have, it's going to be continued right over here, they could have sold or given away the tokens, as the crypto people filing amicus briefs themselves point out. So the court is basically saying just by holding tokens, you have consented to being a part of this DAO, and they're not even inquiring into whether or not you voted for or against any particular thing the DAO did that the regulator, the CFTC in this case, might have a problem with. This next part is probably good for you to know if you hold DAO tokens in Cardano DAOs or in any other ecosystem. The court says, contrary to the crypto people's contentions, it is irrelevant that some token holders voted against certain decisions or that they abstained from voting. You hear that? The judge is saying it's irrelevant. If you held token holders, if you held tokens, it's irrelevant that you voted against something or that you even refused to vote. Not voting and voting against a proposal are both voluntary choices made to further the common purpose of governing the DAO. Indeed, based on the complaint, it seems that individuals who own but do not vote their tokens still comprise the DAO because the purpose of holding a token is being able to vote on the DAO's governance. There are no other factual allegations that provide for other reasons to hold tokens, and the crypto people do not offer any alternatives. Thus, the DAO and its token holders have a common objective, making choices to govern the DAO. So if you just acquire a bunch of tokens on some DEX, a bunch of DAO, governance tokens on some DEX, according to this judge, you're in it. You're in it. You're a part of that DAO. And it doesn't matter if you even vote against something the DAO is doing or if you abstain from voting. This judge doesn't care. This next section is kind of ominous. The judge says, and at this point in the proceeding, fairness requires recognizing the DAO as a legal entity because, as alleged in the complaint, the protocol itself is unregistered in violation of federal law, and someone must be responsible. Emphasis, the courts. The court put that in italics. Someone must be responsible. That's a direct rejection of this notion we have in crypto, this myth that if you have a DAO, No one's responsible. It's decentralized. That's a magical shield. That means no one's responsible. Let's face it, with the way DAOs are run today, there's always someone who could be identified by the regulators. There's always a bunch of founders. Not always. Some, I'll admit, there are DAOs. There are DAOs where you don't have this, but in most of the cases, in most of these big projects, especially DeFi projects, there's some identifiable founder who founded the lab entity, built the protocol and platform, handed it over to a DAO, and retained a bunch of tokens. Why do they retain the tokens? Because they want to make money. They want to make money off this project. So they have the tokens. They're token holders. That means, according to this judge, they're a part of the DAO, and just serving that person is going to be enough. It was in this case. Serving that identifiable person was enough for service of process for this judge. And here he's saying, hey, guess what? Not only is the service of process good enough, but also, according to me, regulators can sue the DAO. There's nothing magical about the DAO, nothing. There is no invisibility cloak. There is no magical shield. Just go ahead, regulator. You can sue DAOs. Here's what you should actually be thinking about. Here's the scary question to which we don't know the answer. Let's say, now that we know that, according to this judge at least, regulators can go after the DAO, what if the regulators go after the DAO and they get some kind of a big judgment against the DAO, and there's not enough money in the treasury to satisfy the judgment? Or what if it's even worse? What if it's something criminal? What are the possibilities that the token holders are held responsible for what the DAO does? Here's what a few observers of crypto law had to say about all this. Any crypto project / plan to even attempt to circumvent legal regs / process is a fool's errand. SBF, it pisses off judges and often becomes a first impression on the court judge. Be careful about playing fast and loose with financial crimes or errors of omission in 2023. Play by the rules. This poster said, this will kill the go-to game for most crypto law firms. And you'll probably have noticed all of the projects seem to be doing exactly this. Labs, founders form a lab, they build the project, pass the project off to a DAO, and then it's like, we're good, we'll sell all our tokens and ride off into the sunset unscathed by the possibility of any kind of regulatory intervention. This is what every single project has been doing. And obviously that was the standard advice that a certain percentage of crypto law practitioners were giving to everyone. Obviously, either that or all of the clients were not heeding the advice they were getting. But obviously that seemed to be a common theme in the advice they were getting, because that's what they were all doing. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more of this. And in 2023, probably a lot of projects are going to discover they were walking unprotected through the lion's pen the whole time. This might end up being a tremendous problem for some of our competitor blockchain ecosystems. Some of these blockchain ecosystems who have a huge amount of their volume coming from DeFi, and it's basically, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's all of our competitors, but certainly some of our biggest competitors, a huge amount of their volume is purely DeFi. And these DeFi projects have pretty much all followed this same game plan. They've sort of been rolling along, doing the same thing for quite a while. 2023 might be the year when those ecosystems figure out that they should have diversified. They shouldn't have put all their eggs in the DeFi basket. Cardano, on the other hand, yeah, we've got DeFi projects, and yeah, they've followed the same game plan, and yeah, they could run into the same problems, but it's a much smaller part of what we do. It's only a sliver of what the Cardano ecosystem does. It's not the whole thing like some of our competitors. Guess what we have now in Cardano, our very own social media platform. It comes to us from Emergo, and it's called CardanoSpot.io. If you've used a lot of social media platforms over the years, this won't be too startling to you. There are some distinct differences from something like Twitter. You notice here, I was able to put all of this text in one post as opposed to having to break it up into mini posts like on Twitter. This might remind you a little bit more of something like Reddit or maybe if you used forums back in the old days before big tech took over social media, this might remind you a little bit more of one of those old school forums. I like this kind of format. I like not having that sort of artificial limitation of having to create these threads of mini posts. I like being able to put a little bit more into one post. But who knows? Maybe you won't. You'll see there's already a bunch of people you might recognize over here. They're subcritical. And I'm interested to see how fast or how slowly this grows. Hopefully it's fast. It'd be nice if we have sort of our own vibrant social media platform that we can all use. Here's some interesting data for you. It turns out that even in this post FTX environment, the ordinary run of the mill thieves are still the kings of the robbery forest. This post says, in our just released rug pull report, we analyzed the number of investors harmed by rug pulls relative to this year's biggest crypto bankruptcies. Our finding, 1.93 million investors have lost money to rug pulls, more than the number impacted by FTX, BlockFi, and Voyager. So if you take FTX, plus BlockFi, plus Voyager, the ordinary run-of-the-mill token scams still exceed the number of crypto investors impacted by those failures. IOG wants you to not be alarmed. They say you may have seen that Lace can read your Chrome browsing history. Turns out it's not the Lace wallet people doing this to you. They say this is a Google requirement for all wallet browser extensions in the Chrome web store. Rest assured, Lace and IOG value your privacy and data. So this is not Lace or IOG doing this to you. This is a Google requirement for all wallet browser extensions. In metaverse news, Pavia just dropped this brand new video today to give you some peeks at how their builder tool is going to work. Finally, the very first Cardano Music Awards went down. You can check out the live stream at Nito's profile. I hope everybody's having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.